Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video was requested by someone, and what you're going to be building today is a very simple yet very important application. So it's going to be a table. We're going to use the list components available provided by the Fyne library, and this component is going to contain add buttons and deleting buttons, and also a search bar. So with me here, I have a very simple application, and we can try running it up so that you can see how it looks like. So as you can see here, we're going to have a search here whereby you can enter like an entry text and a search button, and here we're going to have an add button, and how to do is are going to be displayed down here. So to get started, we are going to modularize our app. We're going to have several uh, packages or modules as they're called in Go. So we're going to first by defining our models. So you're going to define a model here. We're going to say to do.go, and then you're going to say it's going to be a package of models. Then you're going to define our types here. Type our models to do struct, and in our to do we're going to have an ID. Of course, it's going to be a primitive object ID. This is how we're going to. So in our case, we're going to use MongoDB for storing the data. Of course, you can use a database of your choice. We're going to omit empty so that the ID is not going to be empty. And since, as you can see here, we don't have this one installed, so we're just going to say go mod tidy so that you can download it. Of course, you need internet to do this. So then, as this is downloading, we're going to add another. We're going to have a title, which is going to be a string. Then you can just copy this, and then here we're going to have title, and then we're going to have the contents, so in our database that is on MongoDB, it's going to be stored as title, and this one is going to be stored as content. And then finally we can say maybe status. We can have our status here. Then we have finished defining our models. Okay, and then after our models, we're going to define our utils. Now in this folder, we're going to have two components. We're going to have a to-do component. It's going to have our utilities, like the components that are we're going to be using to add our data, to delete and update them. So we can start first by creating our database component so that it can be used to connect to our DB. So we're going to have two functions. We're going to have first function, which is going to be connect DB, and for connect DB is going to first accept a URL, which is going to be from the that is MongoDB URL. Then we're going to have a Fyne window so that we can display our details. And then the next function we're going to have a function for getting our collection. Defining our collection, I mean. So we're going to have our collection. Of course, it's going to be a string, and then once we define that, it's going to return a Mongo collection. So this one is returning collection, Mongo collection. It's going to return. Now in this case, for us to get our collection, if you've interacted with MongoDB, you need to have a client. So we're going to define our client here so that it can be accessed however so that once you connect to the DB, we define our client and then we can use it to get our collection. So I just define it here, Mongo dot client. As you can see, it's not defined. We've not downloaded it. Just do go more tidy so that it can download it for us. Okay, it's done downloading, so we can come back here and start connecting. So we're going to start defining our client options. Client options. Going to do options dot client dot apply URL. Of course, this is going to be URL that's going to be supplied for the Mongo, and then we're going to get our client. In case of an error, we can display the error mongo.connect. So we're going to do our connection, provide our context, background, and then we supply our client option. So we're connecting to this URL that we're going to be supplying, and then if there is an error, we're going to use a dialog to tell the user that there is an error connecting. So you can just say Mongo connect, and then you can say failed to connect to MongoDB, and then we pass our parent window. Otherwise, if it was successful, we're going to return the client, and then we're going to initialize it. This is going to be so that the client that we had here earlier defined, so that you can be able to use it down here. Now we equate it to this one, and then you can also decide to ping. Then we're going to say client dot ping. We ping the database context to do name, and then if there is an error pinging, we also return that error. Mongo ping failed to ping MongoDB, failed to ping MongoDB. Then you can come here, and then we're just going to use the client dot database. Then our data can call our database maybe testdb dot collection. We get the collection, and then we can get the collection that we're doing. Of course, there is a lot of error handling that you can do, but for simplicity of this video, I'm just going to leave it like that. So now we can come back to our main app and make sure that everything is working. So we can connect to the DB. So I'm just going to say utils.connect DB, and then we're going to supply the URL. Of course, in most cases, it's going to be MongoDB because mine is localhost. It's going to be localhost 270.17, and then I'm going to supply the window. Now we can try our app to see if it's connecting to the database. And run the app to ensure that it is connecting to the database. Yeah, we're not getting any errors, so it means that we are connecting to the database successfully. Now that we are connecting to the database successfully, I believe we can start defining our utility functions like adding a to-do, deleting a to-do, and so on. So I'm just going to come back to the utils and I'm going to create a new file here, call it to-do.go, and then we're going to have a package course utils. Then I'm going to start with the first one. Of course, the first one going to add to-do. So when we're adding to-do, of course, the first thing we're going to get is the to-dos itself and the window context for the purpose of handling the errors and displaying the result. So this is going to be models.to-do because we've already defined that, and then you can also define the window find.window so that in case of any error you can be able to display it. Then you can return an error so that you can handle it successfully in the front end, of course. And then now we can come here and we get our collection, define our collection so that we can use utils. But since it's in the same directory as this one, you can just use get collection and it can work. But if it is on a different folder, you're going to have maybe the name of the folder and then whatever. So the collection name, I'm just going to call it to-dos. Targeting that, we are going to insert it, of course using MongoDB. Then I'm going to say collection dot insert one. Insert one. Of course, you're going to define the context dot to do, and then the to do that you have provided, and then you're going to return an error. So the reason as why I'm returning an error, it's because I want to handle these errors in my view at the view level. But for this, let's just be like that. So for this one is for adding to do. You can just copy this and then we say update. This one is you can say it's update to do. So when you're updating a to do, what you're going to do is you're going to supply the to do itself and the window. So what you're going to do is collection, because you also return an error, collection dot update one, and then you supply your filters. So what you're going to do is our filters you're going to get by to do ID. Of course, we're going to update it by ID, and then you can provide the provided details. So we're going to say bison.m so that you can supply your filters ID. Of course, here I say they're saving it as ID, that's why I'm supplying it as underscore. If you used just a pair ID without the underscore, you're also going to do the same here. And then we're going to say here to do ID, and then we're going to provide the update. As you can see here, we have the context, the filter, and the update. So this one.m, we're going to update, we're going to set, because all these you can get them in the Mongo. When you come here in the MongoDB update one, you can get more details here. You can understand the set, you also provide the filter, you provide the update, and the rest. So in this section of the update, you can see here we're using set. You can use set, project, and set, so you can get more details when it comes to that. So we're going to set, of course, we're going to whatever the new one that we are providing. So this is supposed to be like this. So after we have successfully updated it, we also return an error, and then we can also provide one for getting to do's. getting to do's, I can just copy this, and then I can just come and say get to do's. That is going to return a list of all the to do's. In this case, we don't have any of this here. Just going to, then what you're going to return, we're going to return the to do's themselves. So I'm just going to say models.todos. So you're going to get the collection, define your collection first. Our collection is going to be this one, and then now we have to do something else here. We're going to define to do's. We're going to say models.to-do, and then we can be able to define our cursor, of course with an error, so that you can be able to handle it in case there's a problem. Collection.find, and then we're going to define our context. To defining our context, since I'm going to get all to do's, as you can see here in find, you're going to provide the context and the filters. If you don't provide any filters, it means that you want to get all the to do's, and then in case there's an error, you can be able to handle it. Okay, so here we're just going to say if error is not equal to nil, we're going to show a dialog that show error. Then we're going to supply the error and the window, so that if there is an error, we're going to return the error. And then after doing that, you're going to defer cursor dot close until we have got everything back, and then we are going to, after we've successfully gotten the, going to do cursor.all to provide the context, what to do, and then we are going to use our to do's right there, so that we can, the user can see them, and then we can handle that error successfully. Otherwise, if there is an error, we're going to show it. Show error, then we supply the window, and then now we can return our to do's. So this is how you get to do's, define a collection, get the to do user cursor to find, and then if you need any filters, like let's say by a certain ID, but since we just want to get all the to do's, you're going to get them, and then here we're going to handle the error successfully, and then eventually we can return our to do's. So what else can we do? We can search, because we have a search component, so we can just define it, and then okay, let's just define it here. Say func search to do's, and then we can add a search text, which is going to be a string window, of course. It's going to be find dot window. Then of course when you search, it's supposed to return the models themselves, because we're going to first get the collection, and then we're going to paste that, and then now we're going to first define a search pattern, and then I'm going to make sure that when you're searching, we are ignoring cases, so that it can be able to search through. So we can define our search pattern, and we tell that when you're going to search the DB, make sure that you are ignoring, cases. So in this case, we're going to use regex. We're going to use regex, and then we're going to supply the search text, and then I'm going to supply the options to ensure that we're ignoring all cases, and then we supply our filter, and our filter in this case we want to ensure that when somebody is searching our to-dos, is going to search with either the content and the status. And remember, this is how they're being saved. So we're going to search and search we can search the title and the status. So any type anything and it's part of the title, search the title and the status as well. So in this case, we're going to supply this, and then we're going to say, so since we're going to use two, we're going to use R for searching the two. This on the term, then the first one I'm going to say it's going to search the title using the search pattern. I'm going to search the status, the search pattern. Then we're also going to use a cursor, so you can just come and copy this so that you can find it, because we're trying to find it. You can just copy it with the arrow. Just copy it to the arrow and then cursor.find. But now we have a filter, so you can just come here and say filter, and then have our cursor so that if there's an error, you can display the error, and then we return nil. And then here we can come down here and we defer cursor dot close context dot to do cursor, and then after doing that, you're going to define how our results are going to be displayed. Of course, we're going to use models dot to do, and then if there's an error, you can just come and copy this one here. And then we're going to say results, and then we're going to return results. So this is how we're going to define. And then in case of this one, this one you have to return nil as well if there is an error. Nil. Yes, so these are the utils that we need: get to do's, get to do's, update to do's, and so on. So now we have defined our database, we define our model, we define our utils. Now it's time we define our views so that we can start displaying our. Okay, do we have to delete to do here? No, we don't have delete. Okay, you can just add it here, delete to do, so that you can allow a user to delete to do. Of course, we supply it to do, but now this one is going to be an ID. Supply the ID. So we have a primitive dot object ID, and then object dot delete one. And it should be delete one, and then we provide the context, and then we provide the filters here so that you can be able to see what criteria it's going to use to delete. And then it's going to be ID, the ID that we provided. So we have add, delete, update, get to do's, and also search to do's. Wow. Okay. Now let's add our views. Now we can start creating our views. So I'm going to come here and say views. Then of course I'm going to define our to do go package views, and then I'm going to say func to do's view. Now this one is going to accept a window, which is going to define dot window of course, and then we're going to return a fine canvas object. And then for simplicity, before we start, we're going to have a container dot new border, no header, no bottom, no left, no right, and then we're going to have a widget dot new label, and then we're going to say maybe hello to do's, so that you can test and make sure it's working. And then we're going to come here, instead of this now, website content, we're going to say views dot to do's view. Then we're going to supply the window. Okay, it's going to be a window, window. Then let's run it and see if our app is running. So it's connecting to the database. Yeah, it's running. So we are getting our views. So now we're going to come back here and start defining our app. So as we said earlier, we're going to have a search bar at the top here and a button here for searching, and then another button here for adding to do's, and then the rest is going to come down here. So we're going to have a title, we're going to have maybe content, status, and actions here for adding and deleting. So now we can start defining our app. So we'll first define our list here, so that we're not going to be limited to use it only here. So we're going to say var to do list, and then we're going to say it's a widget dot list, a widget dot list, and then we're going to define our to do here. Var to do, this is going to be models dot to do, which we had earlier defined. Since we're going to also have a search components, we're going to have a search results. Of course, it's going to be part of the models dot to do. So what is happening here is we're going to, if we search, we're searching to do. So if we search, we don't want to display the entire to do's list. Oh, sorry, this is supposed to be to do's. Then we're going to have a search entry, whereby it's going to be a widget dot entry for entering our search, and then we're going to have no result label, so that if there are no found results, we're going to also display them. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to load our to do, load all to do's from DB, of course, and we already defined this in our utils here. It's free get to do's. So let's define that function. We're just going to say call it load to do's. It's going to be a function, an empty function, of course, but this, if you were to do maybe pagination, like backend pagination, of course you can have maybe get to do's by pagination. You can define your page number and put it here, but in our case it's going to be just simple as that. So for our loading to do's, we have to ensure that these to do's are being loaded from the database, and we have two ways of getting. We can either get the all to do's, or we can search to do's. So we have to account for the cases whereby you can search and the user can also get. So we're going to have several conditions here, so that if the search entry dot text is empty. That means nobody, if you are searching, it's not empty. That means if you are searching for something, you're going to to-dos are going to be the search results. Of course, that means the search entry has some data in it, so somebody is trying to search for something from the database. So our to-dos are going to be equivalent to the search results. Otherwise, if it's empty, that means no one is searching anything. We're going to get our to-dos, which is that gets to-dos. We're going to get our to-dos from the database because no one is searching anything. So we're going to get our to-dos from the database. And then after getting them, we're going to refresh our list to ensure that it's updated. And then we also want to ensure that if the length of to-dos is 0, we have to display this no result label. So we can just come and do it here and say if length of to-dos equals to 0, we're going to say no result label dot show. Otherwise, we hide it. Else, we hide the. We're going to hide the to-dos, the no result label. Now, we want to ensure that when we are loading our to-dos, like when I add a to-do, it should be able to refresh, it should be able to load new to-dos because I've updated them. If I delete, so we're going to define a function that is going to we're going to be using when we are updating our to-dos. So you can just say it update to-do list, so that in case there's some new changes to the to-dos, we can be able to load the to-dos, and then you're also going to update no results label. Now we can just copy this because I want to ensure that if there are no to-dos, should be able to, because this one is going to only load the to-dos, but we also need to be able to update this no result label so that if you have loaded to-dos and there are no to-dos, you can be able to view them. So I can just do this, I can just copy this, and then I just call it update no result label. It's going to be a function of that, and then we're going to do that update no result label. Yes, so that we can be able to update the to-do list and the no result label as well. So another thing we're going to do, since our list is going to contain headers, it's going to contain the data, we have to define our header. So table header, we can call it something like title row. Title row, it's going to be a container.new, grid with columns. Now ours is going to be 4 because when we come to the models, we have title, content, and status. Those are 3, and the 4th one is going to be the action buttons for deleting and adding. So we're going to have a widgets new label with style. The first one is going to be the title of the to-do, then Fyne text align, maybe leading, or you can center it depending on what you want, leading, and then Fyne text style, and then I can say bold to be true because I want it to be bold. What am I missing? It's supposed to be capital B. So we have the title, and then the next thing is supposed to display apart from the title of the content. So you can just copy this and then I add this to content, and then after content we have status, then finally we have the actions where we're going to have the buttons. Wow, so this is going to be our title row. Then the next thing is start defining our list now. Our list, so we're just going to call it to-do list, and then we're going to have widget dot new list. Now let's come back here. Now this is how you define a list. You have this one defines the length of the data that you have. This one defines the labels that you have, and then the last one defines of ways of which you're going to update it. So let's just copy this one here. Instead of typing them manually, I can just copy this one. Let me just copy this, and then we start. Okay, let's start. Now, so in our case, of course, this is just going to be to-dos, because that is our data. And then now we start defining our label. So in this case here, we're going to define how our data is going to be, what is going to be updated in them. So we're just going to have new labels. We're going to have whatever the title, how the title is going to be inserted, because remember this is the header. Now we have the actual data, so we're defining the actual placeholders for the title, for content, for status, for actions. And then after defining the placeholders here we're going to update the data of the placeholders. So what you're going to do here is we're going to define the title first, the title placeholder, and then we're just going to say title label. That's going to be a widget dot new label with style. Initially it's empty, and then of course Fyne dot text align. You can either center it or leading. In this case I'm just going to use leading. Then find the text style. You can just leave it like that. So this one is for the title. But then you have to consider the fact that sometimes these titles can be too long and they're going to overlap into the next content. Like title can be too long, it overflows to content. So to prevent this, I'm just going to say title label dot truncation. I'm going to truncate it. So the dot truncation. Then in this case I'm going to say Fyne dot text transaction ellipsis, so that in this case, so if the title is too long, I'm just going to have 3 dots. So I'm just going to copy this for all the other placeholders. So the second one was after title we had content, after content we have status, I hope it's still recording. Okay, status, and then after status we're going to have buttons. So for the buttons I'm going to have 2 buttons. We're going to have the edit button, and we're going to have the delete button. So I'm just going to say action buttons, and then I'm going to say edit button, which is going to be a widget with new button with icon, no label, and then I'm going to use theme dot document create icon. I'm just going to use create icons for now, and then there's no functionality, of course. We're just defining the placeholders first, and then this is going to be delete button, because document theme dot delete icon. Okay, so after we've defined it, I'm just going to say maybe let us bundle it together, and just can say raw going to be a container. There's new grid with columns. Since here we already used 4, is a grid for grid of 4. The content, of course, should be also a grid of 4. Then how they're going to be displayed. So I'm just going to come here and say title label, content label, status label, and then I'm going to say a container. Put new hbox because I want the edit button and delete button to be horizontal, and then here we are going to return the raw. Now, so we define the length of our to-dos, it defines the length of the list, and then we define placeholders for the data to be filled, and then now we have to come down here to fill up that data that we're getting here. So what we're going to do here is, the first thing that you're going to do here, so you can just change this to object for readability reasons, obj, and then you can just call this id. So now we're going to say that since you're dealing with to do, it's going to say one to do, going to be to do's by id. Okay, then our row is going to be defined by object dot Fyne dot container. Okay, so we can start retrieving the now retrieve the components in the row. So title label, you can just say title label is going to be the first one. Of course, the title in this title label is the first one, the second and third, but indexes start from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So title label is going to be raw dot objects 0 index dot widget dot label to the title. The second one is the content. If I'm not wrong, content label, which is going to be 1. And then we have status, which is going to be 2. And then now we have the buttons, which is going to be the edit button. Now for the edit button, it's going to be in number 3, index 3 dot objects 3. As you can see here, since we define these as labels, initially they are labels. Here they have to be labeled, but these ones are buttons, so this one is going to be dot Fyne dot container, then dot objects. The reason I'm doing this is because it's going to be at position 0 but at index number 3, but it's a button widget dot button. So the button, and then we have, that is for the edit button, and then we have the delete button. The delete button. Wow. Now, after we have defined this, now we have to start filling them with the data. So to fill them with data, we're just going to say title label dot set text to do dot title, content label dot set text to do dot content, and then status label dot set text to do dot status, and then now we come to the buttons. But before we do that, I want us to comment this out so that we can see how this looks like. So I'm just going to display it. So in this case here, we're going to come down here and define some grids. Just going to say container grids so that you can be able to see container grids. So we're going to have two containers. We're going to have an add to do container. It's going to be a container dot new, and then it's going to be a layout dot grid layout with how many columns? I just want one column. Then I can just say this one is going to contain okay, the add to do button we have not defined it yet. We only have the update to do list. This one is no longer being used, so we can just also, let me comment it out first and then update my results. We also have to comment this out so that we can see the progress so far. So our title to do list. So instead of this, because we don't have this, we can just say new border, and then we're going to say the top we're going to have a title row, and then the bottom we're just going to have a nil, and then finally we can say the to-do list. So this one we can just call this the list container. Carry the list container, and then we also have to display the no result label. And then now instead of doing this, we can just come down here and display this list container. And then we see how it looks like. Load to do it. Okay, we can comment this out as well. I want us to okay, as we comment them out, yes, I want us to see how this looks like. Hope it works. Oops. Yeah, because to do list, defining a to do list. Yeah, and it's here to do list. I will display this. Okay, let's just finish it up then. And then we'll see how it looks like. Let's just finish it up. Okay. Okay, let us just finish it up first. So we have the buttons here, the delete button and the add button. So what you're going to do here is you're going to define what happens when you click the delete button and the other button. So what you're going to do here is you're going to come down here and say on tapped it's going to be a function, and this function should open a dialog. So I'm just going to create the function right here, and then I'm going to say function show to do form. I'm going to use the same form for both to do's. So I'm just going to say window, find that window, and then we're going to supply an existing here, so that if we are editing, if we are editing it, we can be able to know exactly what we are doing. So in this case, submit can be a function, it's going to be a function. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be checking this. If it's editing, we're going to use the same form. If it's deleting, we're also going to use the same form. So we want to make sure that when we click edit button, we're going to show the to do form. We're going to supply the window, and then you're going to supply a to do, and then you're going to say update to do list, so that whenever you change your update to do, it's going to load the to do's again, so that when it's edited, it can be viewed. And then the delete button, you can also do this as a delete button, untapped goes to a function, of course. Then I want to show a dialog for this, so that you can be able to say dialog dot show confirm, so that when somebody wants to delete it to do, you can be asked if you want to delete, okay, delete it. Otherwise, no. Are you sure you to delete? So you can just say delete to do. Then we can ask them, are you sure you want to delete the to do? Then we can see how we're going to define our callback, which is going to be a function of a boolean. So we're going to say if b the boolean, if it's okay, then if the user has said yeah, you can delete it, we're going to delete it. So we're going to say utils dot delete to do. You know what I supposed to supply the id, so we're going to be to do dot id and the window, but of course we have to gracefully handle this error. So we're going to say if error is not equal to nil, we're going to display the dialog. We're going to show the error and say, hey, there was a problem deleting your Then otherwise, if it is successful, you're going to update the to-do list, and then you're going to say a dialog dot show information. Say I'm going to say here to do deleted. I'm going to supply the read. This is the dialog. It's going to supply the window. I'm going to supply the delete window. Then the same thing should happen to the edit. Okay, let's try see if it's going to run. If it's going to work. Yep, we need to supply more items. Still getting a null pointer. Okay, so because we're not supplying some the to-do list, where is it rendered? The to-dos, connecting it. There is something. Okay, let's come to the views. Search entry. The label is fine. Okay. Main.go19, of course. To-dos views. Okay, to-do to-do. Okay, let's add a to-do button. There's something that I've not added, that's why it's not running. So let's add a add to-do button. To-do button. I'm going to write the widget.new button. And then I'm going to say add to do. Then I'm going to define a function. Of course, we're going to say show to do form. Then I'm going to supply the window because these things are null. Then update to do list. I'm going to update the to do list. 0, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, this should be 1. Let's try this again. This should be 1 because let's see. Now I need to add this to do button somewhere. So we can have add to do button container. Add to do button container. Then you can say widget dot. No, container should be a container because we want it to be below the search entry, which I have not defined yet. But we can wait a minute. Search entry, search results. Okay. So we have to do that. I'm just gonna say container dot new, and then we'll say layout grid layout. Layout, grid layout. Yes, continue to make grid layout. Of course, it's going to be one, and then I'm going to define a list wrapper. It's going to contain all of it. It's going to contain the search and the add button layout dot the container that new border, that new border, and then at the top I'm going to have the add to do button, and then the rest will follow. Mail, nothing on the left, and then nothing on the right, and then we can have the list container. We can copy this here, and then this list wrapper can come here now. Okay, and to do button should be here. Okay, let's run this and see if it's going to run. Why is it not working? Short do button. What am I missing here? Need update to do list. It's loading the to dos. Just looking at the search entry. I will not define the search. Okay, let's define the search. Let's define the search button. Let's define the search. So now when somebody finds so if somebody enters something, they're going to, of course, need a new entry. It's going to be an entry, and then such entry is going to set a placeholder, and then say maybe search by status, and then we're going to have a search button. Then we're going to say widget dot new button with icon, and then we're going to say theme dot search icon. It's going to be a function. So we're going to have a search. We can just define the text here. Let's say search text. It's going to be search entry dot text, so that they receive it. And then we're going to say if the search text is not equal to empty, we're going to update the search results. It's going to be utils dot search to dos. Then we apply the search text, the window. After applying the search text and the window, we're going to update the no results label, and then we're also going to update to do list. Otherwise, we're going to say the search results equals to nil, and then we're going to update the to-do list. So that is the search container. And then now we can define our search container here and say search container because we want it to be at the top of the entry search and the button. So we have a container with new, we have the layout, the new grid layout, new grid layout, of course it's going to be 2. We're going to have the search entry and the search button. So this is going to be at the top of everything else. And then after doing all that, we're supposed to display the results label. Results label, we're going to say no results label. It's going to be a widget with new label. We'll just say no results, no results found, and then you can say no results label dot hat by default, and then we update to-do list. And now we have the containers. How do we display them? So that we're going to come here, the search container is supposed to be at the top. So this is how we're going to display them. So we're going to come down here at the restore upper. We're going to how to display this at the top of all of this. So we're going to have another container here, dot new border, search container, and then nil, 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 and the list wrapper. So new border, we have top is going to be the search container, bottom is nil, left is nil, right is nil, and then finally the list wrapper. And then we display it. Okay, let me hope I've captured everything. Okay, what am I missing here? To do.go at party. Okay, 151. Update to-do list. 151. Then go back to 48. What am I missing? 48, 48. Not to do's. There's something wrong with not to do's. Okay, what is wrong with not to do's? Let's debug it. See what the problem is. So we have the search entry dot text, and then we're defining the search results. And to do dot get to do's, and then we're refreshing it. Then we have the to-do list. What is the problem? Nil, nil, nil. Am I getting a nil pointer? To-do.go 30, 30, 30. To-do list dot refresh. 30, 48. But no result anymore. Okay, what is wrong with this? Okay, what is the issue here? Not to do this. I don't have a Go routine here. What could be the issue? Say 4 3 4 0 1 2 3. This one is fine. Wow, such text with such to-dos. Such text. Okay, that could be the problem here. Such entry dot text update to-do list. How to do that? Okay, let me try figuring this out. I don't know why it's not displaying issues, but well, this is how it looks like. So there's an issue with the search. Okay, we'll figure that out later on. For now, this is how the application looks like. So we have our search, we have our add. So I think the problem is the search container. So let's see what the problem is. Update to-do list. Okay, where is it? Update to-do list. Let's see update to-do list. So that means the problem could either be with load to-dos or this update to-do list. Okay, we'll deal with that later on. Now that's how the application looks like. So let us now add a to-do form so that we can be able to see how it looks like, and then we'll debug that later on. So in this case, our to-do form, we want to have just very simple things. We want it to add to-dos and to be able to edit to-dos. So I'm just going to save our to-do. It's going to be models let to-do, and then we're going to check if you're editing or if you're adding a new to-do. You should be able to deal with that. And then we're going to say so that if you're editing will show the same form, and if you are adding also use the same form. So if this edit is true, we're going to say to do is equal to existing, because we are editing the form. So now we're going to have three entry. We have the title, the content, and the status. So you can just start with the title, and then you can come and say title is equals to widget, that's new label, Then I'm going to say title dot set text to do dot title, and then we're going to have the content. So this should be new entry not label. New entry, and then we're going to have title, content, and then we're going to have status. So status is going to be a list. So we're just going to have a widget. Just going to allow the user to select. So it's going to have a list of statuses. We can have maybe done and to do. And then we're going to have a function here. Then we're going to say status dot set selected to do dot status. Now let's define the form. So we're going to have a form here, which is going to be a widget dot form. A form has items and on submit handlers. So the first thing, we're going to define the items. Our items, of course, they're going to be widgets dot form item, and then we're going to have the text, how they are displayed. Of course, the first one is the title, and then the widget is going to be the title. That was one we defined above. So you can just copy these, three of them: title, content, and then the status. So for defining the items, we're going to have the onSubmit handler. It's going to be a function. So when we are submitting, the first thing we have to do is to capture these items that we defined here. So first, by capturing them, we're going to say to do dot title, title dot text, to do dot content, going to be content dot text, and then to do dot status, going to be status dot selected. After capturing them, we're also going to look at we can add validation to prevent, but for now you can just skip that, and then you can say if this edit is true, I'm just going to update them. It's going to say air equals to utils and update to do. I'm going to supply the to do and the window. Of course, we're going to check if there is an error. Then if there is an error, we're going to show the error. Going to show the error. Otherwise, we're going to show a dialog. It's going to say we have successfully to do updated. To do edit, it's going to say to do updated. Of course, we're going to supply the window. Otherwise, if this edit is not true, we're going to define new ID then we're going to say primitive plus new object ID. Then we're going to add them. We're going to add to do because we are adding. So that we're going to say details there. Utils with add to do, then to do add to do added, to do added, so that if you have successfully added the to do, then after all that we're going to say if submit, because we're going to submit it, but equal to null, we're going to return and submit, which is a function. And then we're going to come down here, and create our form container. It's going to be our container plus new vbox form, and then we're going to display a dialog that show custom, which is going to do form, and then cancel in case you don't want the form again, form container, and then you show the window. Okay, form container, let's see if this is working. Okay, let's see if this works. And to do, it's working. Okay, let's test it out. Let's say title, content, done. Yeah, we get an error. There's something wrong somewhere. To do.go, here. We'll come to this form here. Submit. Okay. Let me try debugging this. To do.go 49 to 8. Plenty of errors. Let me see what I'm missing here, because we're adding a to do here. And submit is a function existing. To do, defining our to do is edit, defining our inputs here, the form, widget.form items, widget.form items, because that's fine, and submit. And then we're seeing if its edit is true, updating it, showing the error. If it's false, we're adding this, find that. Then after all that, adding the error, and then I'll submit. Okay, let's come back up here. update to do list, add to do button. What am I missing here? Okay, let's find out the result. So here main.go 20 plus main.go 20. Okay, back here. So we have, okay, let me see, to do.go 208, 208, let's see, 208 on submit. What's wrong with on submit? So what means this? Means it's something is wrong with this update to do list. Update to do list. Okay, let's look at it. Update to do list. It is, what is wrong with this update to do list? So guys, this is our application, and I was trying to look at the problem, and I realized that this to-do list, I had defined it here globally, and then I was trying to define it here again. So in this case, we can try running this application and see how it looks like now. So this is how our application looks like. You see, you can delete the to-do, you can add one, you can search. Let's say, let's add a new to-do. Let's call it title 2, content 2. And then you can try searching it. You can search 1, you can see there's no result. You can search 2, you can see there's a result. Then you can try deleting the to-do. So this is how you can create a very simple application, yet very powerful to can use to for new applications. So thank you guys, and see you in the next video.